Hi, hello, welcome, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Cynthia if you are new here, and I'm very excited. I finally started the Throne of Glass series. I was hesitant, but everyone recommends the Throne of Glass series. It is a staple of fantasy romance, and as someone who really enjoys fantasy romance, I figured it was time to read it. My introduction to Sarah J. Maas was through the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which I devoured in July of 2023. I think I read all 5 books, or 4.5 books if you don't count Frost and Starlight as a whole book, within the span of 2 weeks in July of 2023. So leave it to say I loved those books, but I was disappointed with Silver Flames and just kind of the direction the series was taken. I did try getting into the Crescent City series, but turns out urban fantasy is not for me. I also made a video that I will read it if you can change my mind about it, but until then I have no interest. And so one day I blacked out and bought the whole Throne of Glass series. I have no excuse for it. You can see some of them on the shelf. I have the other 3 here with me, and I'm just excited to chat about them. Today we're going to be talking about the first 3, which are Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and The Assassin's Blade. And I also kind of want to touch on the reading order of these 3. I chose one reading order, and I don't want to say I regret it, but I'm not really happy with the way that I chose to read them. And if I could go back, or if I do a reread, I will definitely be reading them in a different order. I will also try to keep this video as spoiler-free as I can, but to just be completely transparent with you, it's not my fault, it's Sarah's fault, okay? She literally put spoilers in the description, so I can't really help it, but I will keep it spoiler-free where I can. So everything will be tagged before I spoiler anything, so you can skip over it or just leave. If you really don't want spoilers. But other than that, these are just my opinions. And if you read this series, I'm definitely interested in your opinion on these first 3 books. So let's just dive right in. So in terms of reading order, I read Throne of Glass first. And depending on the reading order that you read it in, you either read this one first or you read it second. I read it first. But essentially, in Throne of Glass, we meet our main character, Selena, who is pulled from the salt mines of Endeavor, which is essentially a slave camp by Dorian, the crown prince, because he has chosen Selena to be his champion and represent him in the deadly competition that the king is holding to find his next personal assassin. So Selena, along with 20 other deadly and petty crime men, they're just bad guys, okay? They're just really bad guys. They're all competing to win, and the competition takes place over 12 weeks, which I thought was a little strange, but that doesn't really matter. It's just a random opinion that I have, and Selena, should she win, will be granted her freedom. So there's a lot at stake here. There's also a lot of other little subplots going on, so let's just chat about it. Looking back at my review for Throne of Glass is really funny because, and I quote, I wrote, "To be honest, I'm kind of glad that I read this book first. It was a nice introduction to the series, and while I am sure there is a ton more to be expanded on, this is a nice start." Oh boy, has my opinion changed. But I really did enjoy Throne of Glass. I feel like there were some parts that I kind of missed or went over my head because I didn't read The Assassin's Blade first, which is something I'll touch on a little bit later when I get to that one. But in terms of Throne of Glass, I really liked Dorian. Okay, I'm a Dorian girl. I want to make that very, very clear right now. I love him. I need more. Okay. Selena was also interesting in this book. We see her really try to get back to herself as well as try to learn more about herself. I feel like she's suffering from the amnesia trope or something. There's something else going on that we really just don't know at this point. I also really like Dorian and Selena's banter. They kind of turn friendship to flirtation, whatever, but I found that I really liked it. I just thought they were extremely cute together. I couldn't help it. I know they probably shouldn't have, but I really enjoyed it. I also really liked Selena's friendship with Nehemia, the Princess of Elway. I loved the nickname that Nehemia gives to Selena. It was such a nice, sweet moment, especially with all the darkness that's going on in this book. It was such a nice, moment. But all in all, 4 stars out of 5 stars for Throne of Glass. I enjoyed it. I wanted more. It really dragged in the first half, but that's going to be a common theme. And next on the list, I will also say there is a minor spoiler in the description, but if you have half a brain, it really shouldn't be a spoiler. But the next book that I read in the Throne of Glass series was Crown of Midnight, and in Crown of Midnight, Selena has won. She is the king's champion, but not everything is as it seems. Crown of Midnight picks up I want to say maybe a couple weeks to a month or so after the events of Throne of Glass. It really has not been that long. And Selena is having a lot of fun spending her money being the king's champion. But everyone is keeping a lot of secrets. Selena's keeping secrets, Dorian's keeping secrets, Cole's keeping secrets, Nahimi's keeping secrets, Lakina's keeping secrets, everyone's keeping secrets. And so all of these secrets just kind of dwell in the background until they lead to a really unspeakable tragedy. And this pretty much shatters Selena's whole world. It shatters the life that she was starting to build for herself in Rifthold being the king's champion. And she's really forced to choose at this point who and what she is actually willing to fight for. It was in Crown of Midnight that I realized that these early books are just going to be boring in the first half, and I'm just going to have to push through, and it is what it is. But it struck again. But I did enjoy Selena's growth in this book, and we also learn a lot more about Selena's past, which I thought it was kind of funny, because thinking back on it, like, Sarah just drops these little reveals like they're not a big deal, and you're like, okay, and then you're like, oh, okay. Like, that's kind of a big deal, Sarah, but sure. There is also a bit more romance in this book where Dorian and Selena just like flirted and kissed in Throne of Glass. Things do take a more romantic turn in Crown of Midnight. It's not spicy by any means, but I wasn't really a fan of the love interest, so it didn't really have my attention. I just kind of quickly read through those parts so we could move on. There is a subplot going on with Dorian, and I don't really want to say anything else because I don't want to spoil it, but I really wanted to know more about Dorian's subplot, partially because I am obsessed with him, and partially because I was tired of reading about the love interest because I didn't care. Cole played an interesting role in this book. I didn't really like some of the opinions that he had towards Selena, but I mean, getting to know Cole in Throne of Glass, I'm not shocked. And the ending of this book was extremely sad. Not as sad as Assassin's Blade, but still sad nonetheless. But again, like, this just feels like a drop in the Throne of Glass bucket that is this series. This feels like nothing. I feel like I'm talking about nothing compared to what's going to happen. Like, I'm so ready. I'm so ready to get into the rest of it. So, Crown of Midnight, 4 stars out of 5 stars. I liked it. I wanted it to do better. And last but certainly not least, we have The Assassin's Blade. I also just want to preface that I will be calling this either Assassin's Blade or the prequel. I don't know why. I just noticed that I kept referring to it as the prequel or Assassin's Blade, so please just bear with me. But The Assassin's Blade is actually 5 novellas. It's not one whole story, but the way the novellas read and the way they weave together very nicely, it honestly reads like one story. Like, you probably wouldn't know that they were novellas if you took out the pages that announced each novella. You probably would think it was just one good story. And honestly, this suffers the same thing as the other 2 books, where the first half is a little bit slow to get into. But in Assassin's Blade, Selena is her kingdom's most feared assassin, and she's working for the powerful and ruthless Assassins Guild. We also meet Arobin Hamel, Selena's master/handler in this book, and I have thoughts. We'll get to that in a second. But essentially, Arobin sends Selena on a mission. She goes against his wishes, and that is the catalyst for the other 4 novellas. She goes against Arobin and is punished severely. So let's get into it. So in Assassin's Blade, we have the assassin and the pirate lord, the assassin and the healer, the assassin and the desert, the assassin and the underworld, and the assassin and the empire. The Assassin and the Pirate Lord, which is the first novella, is pretty interesting. It had my attention, but it is in this novella where Selena goes against Arobin, and that sets in motion the rest of the novellas. It kind of lost me a little bit in The Assassin and the Healer. I just wasn't super invested. That probably is also the shortest one, so it's not too bad. But things do start to pick up by the time we get to The Assassin and the Desert. Things start to get pretty interesting, and things start moving pretty fast. once we get to the desert novella. But like I mentioned towards the beginning of the video, I really would have preferred to have read this book first. I feel like because I read this third, there were things that happened in Throne of Glass that I just didn't catch or pick up on because I didn't have context from The Assassin's Blade. But if I'm being honest, I think my biggest gripe was just the fact that by the end of Crown of Midnight, I was so ready to dive into the Heir of Fire that I just didn't want to stop and go back for a prequel. So honestly, if I do a reread, or if I could have gone back, I definitely would have read this one first. And like I said, the 5 novellas are woven together so well and cleverly that it reads like one story. And I know what you're thinking, okay? You're thinking, if you really didn't want to read it, why'd you just skip it? Well, let me tell you something. I am very easily influenced, and I Googled, do I have to read The Assassin's Blade? And according to the interwebs and my fellow readers, yes, The Assassin's Blade is required to read it. So if you're thinking about skipping it, don't. I did start the paperback, but let me tell you, it was dragging, so I switched to the audiobook so that I could listen to it at work and try to read it a little bit faster. And the audiobook narrator was good. She really did a good job at bringing like the different characters to life, but I wasn't really a fan of her voice in general, which really is a personal preference. But the audiobook was good, and if you can access the audiobook, I would definitely consider pairing it with like an ebook or the paperback just to kind of push through it if you were like me and you really didn't want to read it. But overall, 4 stars out of 5 stars. Wish it would have picked up a little bit. You know, wish we could have done without the lulls in the beginning, but what can you do? But overall, I'm really starting to understand why everyone loves this series and Selena, and I honestly feel like the first 3 books are just like nothing compared to the rest of the series, and I just find that really funny. But in terms of reading order, there's a lot of discourse around the reading order in my opinion, as well as the tandem read, which I will not be doing. The last 2 books, Tower of Dawn and Kingdom of Ash, are set, I believe, in the same like timeline. So people tandem read them. So they read a couple chapters from each book separately, but like those books are big. Okay, I think I'm just gonna read one at a time because I didn't like the first recommendation I got, and I don't know if I'm gonna like that either. But my advice in terms of reading order, if you want my 2 cents, is that if you're someone like me who likes to have things in chronological order, who likes to have context going into the next book, who likes to pick up on things in later books from early books, then you should read Assassin's Blade first. You should read the prequel first before you read Throne of Glass. If you want to start your like detective board and you got your markers ready and you have your red like tape ready to go to start putting pins in the board, the Assassin's Blade first. If you want more of an emotional impact, then I would say read Throne of Glass first, because I definitely felt the emotional impact from the Assassin's Blade reading it first. I don't know if I would agree that it's the more like romantic order to read it in, but I think if you want more of like a gut punch, then read Throne of Glass first. But if you're someone who's a little bit more type A like me, save yourself the time, save yourself the headache, and read the Assassin's Blade first. And I promise, all 3 books do start a little bit slow, but they do pick up. Don't let that like deter you from reading the books, because they are good. And I will say the ending of Throne of Glass was a little over the top for my tastes, but the ending of the Assassin's Blade was rough. And Arobin Hamel makes me want to like punch holes into my wall. He makes me so now that I've read the first 3 books, is the rest of the series worth continuing? Absolutely. Absolutely. I almost wish, if anything, I could have just like gotten the Spark Notes, Cliff Notes, summarized version of these 3 and then jumped into the actual story, because these 3 don't even feel like the actual story. With some of the spoilers I've seen online, which, I mean, you can't really help, I feel like these 3 are just like I've told you nothing. We've discussed nothing. Like, I'm gonna come back when I finish the series and I'm gonna think about this video and I'm just gonna be like, I told them nothing. But I'm also so excited for that. I'm so excited to really like get into the meat of this series, because if this series was like a meat and vegetable stew, so far it's only been vegetables. I don't know if that was a good comparison, but it's the first one that popped into my head. But like I said, they do start a little bit slow. You definitely have to just push through the lulls in the beginning. I think they're worth pushing through. I think this series is worth it. But I'm also excited about this series because, unlike ACOTAR, which kind of started to decline as the books went on, like, who was Reese in Silver Flames? Who was that? Who was that? That was not my Reese. That was not my Reese. But where that series kind of started to go downhill and like we don't have any idea when we're going to be getting the next book, I really like that Throne of Glass is completed, but I also really like that Sarah J. Maas started writing this series when I believe she was like 16, 17, and so we really get to see her like evolve as a writer and a storyteller and as just like a creative person, and that's so exciting. I find that to be so exciting, so I'm excited to read all of them. I do have all the books. I'm like breaking my arm here to point at them. But I do have all the books. I don't know what happened. Like I said, I blacked out, and next thing I know, I had all the books. I don't know. Don't ask. Ask my credit card what happened. But that's all I've got. I'm all talked out. If you've read the Throne of Glass series, if you read the first 3 books, I would definitely love to know your opinion on them. Also, where do you stand in the discourse? That is the reading order, because after choosing the romantic reading order, thinking that I would like that better, my like type A brain was like, no, we should have read the Assassin's Blade first. Mainly because there's a scene in Throne of Glass with Dorian and Selena. If you know, you know. And he's just kind of like inquisitive about her. I feel like that scene would have had so much more of an impact had I read the Assassin's Blade first. But anyways, I'm starting to yap, and we're trying to not yap because I got other stuff to do. But if you read this series, I would definitely love to know your spoiler-free thoughts on it, especially these first 3 books, because that's all I've read thus far, and as well as your opinion on the reading order discourse. The tandem read, I guess let me know if you tandem read the last 2 books, Tower of Dawn and Kingdom of Ash. Did you enjoy the tandem read? Just because I don't think I'm gonna like it. I don't think I'm gonna want to tandem read just based off the fact that they're 2 big books, and I'm like fighting for my life trying to read all these books. So I just don't think a tandem read is for me, but if it worked for you, I would definitely love to know. So with that being said, thank you as always so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.